All right, and we're back for another episode of the Lakers Fast Break podcast. It's Gerald Glassford coming right back at you here from Lakers Fast Break, Pop Culture Cosmos, Game Source, and Inside Sports Fantasy Football. We truly appreciate everyone out there listening to all of our shows. And if you can, please give us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. Plus, if you can like, share, subscribe, follow, or do anything that you can to support us right here at the Lakers Fast Break, Lakerholics.com, medium.com/basketball-university, and also our great friends at the Hoopheads Podcast Network at hoopheadspod.com. It is sincerely appreciated. Well, right now we're in the thick of things in the NBA playoffs. We've just seen over the past day or so the Clippers do an El Foldo act once again, all the way to get back into the game. They worked so hard, and the defensive struggle it was against the Phoenix Suns, only to have Paul George blow it at the free throw line once again. Pandemic P rises once again, I'll tell you what. But before we get to the NBA playoffs update, before we get to Kyle Kuzma and the Kyle Kuzma Dilemma, which we'll talk about later in the program, regards to what his real value is to other NBA teams, and also if he stays on the Lakers. We'll also talk about some under the radar, because we talked about some big trade and free agent targets on our last program. What are some of the under the radar moves that the Lakers can make to help fill out the roster a little bit better than they did last year? We'll talk about that coming up. Plus, Jason Kidd is reportedly trying to woo some coaches over to Dallas with him that are on the Lakers staff. Come to me, come with me and Mark Cuban. Come. Which do you think will leave, and which do you hope will stay? We'll talk about that coming up as well. And I was on another show recently on the Upside Swings podcast. So if you check that out, my appearance there, it is greatly appreciated. Stone Hansen and the guys do a great job on that show talking about the NBA draft. And I was on there, and one of the questions fielded to me was, what is the worst option for the Lakers right now? And I took some time to think about it. And I said that the worst option for the Lakers is if they make the pick at number 22 and keep the pick at number 22. I'll explain why and ask these guys as well if that's the case, or do they think I'm crazy? So we'll talk about that coming up in the show as well. But guys are here right now to talk NBA basketball. And before we get into it, guys, I want to go ahead and say I'm mad at both you, Spencer Young, from Basketball University, and also you, LakerTom. I'm incensed at both of you that we did not we did not pool our money together. We did not go into our wallets. We did not go into our bank accounts and pull our money together, because I guess the Lakers 27% was up for sale to the highest bidder. And it looks like Lakers minority, I guess the Lakers percentage owner, the minority percentage owner, Philip Anschutz, who's selling his 27% stake in the team. He's going to be selling his 70% stake in the team to two of the Dodgers owners. So that's going to happen there for a tidy $1+ billion. So LakerTom and Spencer, I'm mad at being able to pull everything together. It looks like it right around $1.35 billion. So I want to hear your thoughts on this, guys, before we head into the NBA playoffs. Spencer, did you realize that the Lakers were up for sale, at least this percentage of it?
Well, I mean, I just heard the breaking news like you, and I think just for the sake of Lakers fans, let's hope they're ready to pay the luxury tax and maybe even the repeater tax more championships.
Well, for the Dodgers owners, it did lead, them purchasing the Dodgers has led to 3 straight World Series and a World Series championship. So that can mean good things for the Lakers with new blood in there. So that's good. LakerTom, I know you and I together fell just short of the $1.35 billion needed.
I put my share up, Gerald, but you were like 26.999 million short.
Well, I had to speak to my attorneys and also my AKA just the person behind the money and all that, AKA my
Your
wife.
wife.
So yes, my wife, and she said not in a million years. So I was very disappointed in that. I was just short on the
I tried
money,
to buy shares on Robinhood, but it wasn't listed.
I was going to sell my PS4, and my Xbox One. I could have sold that, but that was just not enough as well. So again, 27% of the Lakers is going to the Dodgers owners, and congratulations to them. Hopefully, that will provide a winning attitude coming in there and maybe some fresh ideas that would be great to look at. I think the Lakers could use it, and since the Lakers have a winning history, it's great to see that some people coming in that have been part of a recent world championship like the Lakers are coming in there as well. So hopefully we can get some of the stuff that Laker Tom had talked about on a previous episode in regards to the upper management and the executive branch being a little bit muddled. Maybe they can help unmuddle that and maybe make it easier for the Lakers to go ahead and carry on with business. But there's still much more to talk about on today's program. The NBA playoffs are at. Spencer, I want to talk to you first. Again, the Clippers did, I don't want to say they choked because they were behind most of the game, but they had a chance to go ahead and capitalize on it. And after a team that, with the right moves here or there, could have been up 3-1, that are now down 3-1, is it all over for the Clippers at this point in time?
Well, yeah, I would say so because they looked tired, frankly. You saw Paul George shot 25% from the field, I think, and he doesn't typically miss free throws. I know he obviously missed free throws in game 2, so again, that signals to a larger issue, which is that they beat the Jazz and then immediately played a really healthy and outside of Devin Booker and Chris Paul, but a really healthy and rested Suns team. And they've tried to make adjustments, right? They're playing Ivica Zubac almost the whole game, and he's doing a decent job at protecting the paint. But this is another game where they had to win, frankly. Unless Kawhi Leonard's gonna return in Game 6 magically, I don't see it for him.
You're right. That's the game they had to win. And unfortunately, a lot of it rested on some more Paul George free throws that were missed. And I know everybody has already seen out there in Twitter land and also as well just out there in news footage and sports footage. Steve Ballmer showing his reaction to the missed free throws once again. And I don't know if say it cost them 100% in the same way that it did in game 3. As we saw what happened when he missed both free throws, but still, that was a gut wrencher. And Laker Tom, your thoughts on it? I know you enjoyed it, and I know you enjoyed Steve Ballmer just writhing in pain right there on the sidelines. But your thoughts on the Clippers? A nice crew, it looks like, but it looks like their season is quickly coming over to an end this week.
I wouldn't write them off completely. This is one of those situations where shots don't fall for the other team, and all of a sudden they start falling for you, and you eke out a win. Then you come back to LA and you win again, and then now you're in a game 7. So it definitely can happen. And I have to say the idea that you go into the game tomorrow with an intention to run them off of the court because of how tired they are and how fatigued they have to be seems to be the perfect strategy and the execution they make of it. But I've been impressed with. Reggie Jackson has been playing out of his mind. He was exactly what we hoped Dennis Schroeder was when we agreed to pay him $16 million, $15.5 a year, and for a guy playing on veteran minimum, Reggie's in for a big payday. And then the other kid, God, I guess escapes his name. My name,
Terrence Mann.
Terrence Mann is exactly what the Lakers hoped Talen Horton-Tucker would be. Second round pick 2 years ago, and this kid is showing up that he's really a big time player. And then you have to think about the Clippers. Obviously, they would be favorites in this series if Kawhi Leonard was playing, and they're if they can hold on to those guys, and if they can, not complete El Foldo, maybe come back and make this a 7-game series or something, or at least string it out to 6. I think it's an embarrassing situation for them, but it's not as bad as it was last year, man. So they'll come back from it. And frankly, they've put together a cast of characters that, when you watch the way antics that they go through and so forth, I mean, it's like perfectly cast set of villains for Laker fans to hate, I'm usually of the type that, I have even as a Yankee fan rooted for the Red Sox in the World Series. Now that's quite an achievement for a Yankee fan to do. I usually root for the division or the team or the league that my team came from, or the team that beat my team, which is one of the reasons I've been rooting for the Suns. But I couldn't do that for the Clippers. I don't know what it is. And that article that was published by, I can't remember who was the first guy that put it out there about why, taking Ty Lue's comment about, well, why don't Laker fans root for Clippers during the playoffs? It's a complete lack of understanding of the situation. And now with the tie between the Lakers and the Dodgers, you can see that this thing is aimed. There's 2 important things I wanted to go back. I'll keep it brief. In addition to the 27% ownership, they have a first right of refusal if the Buss family ever decides to sell. If they decide to sell their 62%, then these 2 guys from the Dodgers would have a right to buy the Lakers. So that's an important part of it. That's the big thing Philip had in his contract that none of the other people have. And then secondly, obviously what they're trying to do is put together you can see the TV package will be a Lakers-Dodgers TV package that will be pitched to some network next time around. And that has got to be the mega package in the country for a TV contract.
Well, that reminds me, because 62% by the Buss family, 27% by now the Dodgers owners from Anschutz. Mm-hmm. I want to ask you this: the other 11%, it's still out there. Spencer, Tom, we can still buy this.
No, there's a UCLA doctor.
Yes, the doctor I know of. I heard he's got like 4%.
He has like, I think 5 or 6.
Yeah, because I know he's the one that bought it from Magic. Is correct?
Right, exactly.
Yeah. So there's still another 5% for us out there. Come on. Mm-hmm. Come on. We can do this.
Just download your Robinhood app and keep looking every day, Gerald, and you let us know when it happens.
All right. Yes, I'm going to sell GameStop stock, and here you go. All right. Okay, sweet. Okay, there you go. Sounds good to me. But, yeah, Tom, I agree with you. It's just hard to get into the NBA playoffs, as far as rooting the team. I watch it as an NBA fan. That's what I'm doing, and obviously for what I do.
I think the games have been great. The games have been great.
Yesterday as a basketball game, if you look at it and you just saw 2 teams and you were just coming there, you saw a hard-fought battle, very defensive-minded. That was playoff basketball right there for you.
Definitely.
A lot of smack talk, Patrick Beverley talking smack, Jay Crowder talking smack back. It's beautiful to watch in regards to that part of it, but getting behind a team, I'm not. If there's any team I'm getting behind, it's in the Eastern Conference. Unless
getting against a team is an easier task than getting behind a team.
Yeah, well, that's if there's any team I'm getting behind, it is the Eastern Conference and Trae Young, because they got walloped, Spencer. They got walloped in Game 2. Game 3 is going to take place right after our taping here today. What are you expecting? Are you expecting from this point forward Milwaukee to take control, or do you think now that it's shifted to Atlanta, the fans there, which have been maligned over the years because even in times like LakerTom had mentioned when they've won 60 games, they have not shown up. They're shown up now. They're there now. So be that as it may, I want to ask you this. Are you hoping or are you thinking that this could still be a series after all?
Well, yeah, I don't think the Game 2 victory by Milwaukee sort of like ends the series here, because I think they're sort of playing with fire, right? If you watch almost every time down, Atlanta's running pick and roll with Trae Young. and Coach Budenholzer of the Bucks, he's sort of taking a different approach. And sometimes they go under on screens for Trae Young. You go under on enough screens and you give up enough open threes, you're bound to lose probably one game, if not two. So, he's conceding open threes to protect the paint, which is sort of his philosophy. We've seen it for, multiple years now, right? I think he's still running a huge gamble there. And so I don't think the series is over at all. It might be 6, it might be 7. I guess it depends on if Trae Young plays like he did in game 1 or if he plays like he did in game 2.
Well, even if they get to a finals, and let's say they play Phoenix, the Phoenix Suns, with all the outside shooters that they have, if they keep on going under, that could be very problematic for Milwaukee. I know that's something that Budenholzer traditionally does, but he may have to go ahead and do something he doesn't like to do, and that's adjust in the game. But LakerTom, do you see this at all being a series? I mean, the momentum is clearly behind Milwaukee right now after that big win in game 2. Now that it shifts to Atlanta, I'm hoping that there will go ahead and split at least. Is that a possibility? I mean, I think it still is.
Yeah, it's a hard game. I agree with Spencer that that big victory. They laid an egg in that game. But I think the one thing that's come out clear that if the point guard position is going to determine the game, if Trae Young goes crazy, Atlanta can beat Milwaukee. Drew Holiday has to do a stellar job, which he did in game 2, of slowing Trae Young down. And if he can do that, then the Bucks will win. I still think it's going to go 7. And I think the important thing to remember is that unlike most of the other series that we've gone through so far this year, the Hawks stole a game. They stole one of those 2 games in Milwaukee, and they have home court advantage now. And they've got a fearless kid in Trae Young who's leading that team. So it wouldn't surprise me if we had a Suns and Hawks NBA Finals. I'm sure that if anybody was putting their bracket together, there couldn't have been many people who had the Suns and the Hawks meeting in the NBA Finals. And I can remember in previous years when there wasn't great teams in the finals, or the Lakers weren't in the finals, when my interest waned tremendously in watching the game. If my wife had something suggested to do better, that I might have even skipped the game in that situation. But I'm watching every game every night. In these last 2 series, and it's been as good a basketball as I can remember. I couldn't believe how many times those guys went up and down the court, and nobody could put the ball in the basket when it was 71-70 or 68-69. I can't remember the exact score, but it was just excruciating. You could just see that people were totally exhausted. Shots weren't anywhere near close. It was definitely just last minute. Those are the kind of shots that you hope your players never settle for in a game, but everybody was settling for them because it was the only thing they could do. But great. It's a great, what are we going to be doing after we finish this podcast? I'm going to be watching the game.
Well, there you go, indeed. But once again, it is the NBA playoffs right now. The Suns are on the verge of eliminating the Los Angeles Clippers 3-1 as it heads back to Phoenix. And also, after this game, it will be the Milwaukee Bucks and the Atlanta Hawks tied 1-1 going into Atlanta for Game 3. So we'll keep updating you as we go along on our shows, the Lakers Fast Break. So keep tuned to us right here at the Lakers Fast Break. But guys, there's so much to talk about when it comes to the Lakers on today's program. Kyle Kuzma and the Kyle Kuzma Dilemma. And the reason I say it's a dilemma is because we've gone back and forth on his value, and we've gone back and forth on his play over the past 3 years now. It's been something that a lot of people have gone over. So is he doing well? He went from a late first-round sensation to a late first-round disappointment to someone that that evolved his game and changed it into something that the team sorely needed in its championship run, to someone that reverted back to a disappointing, shows up once in a while and disappears the next type of individual, which again is just very enigmatic of the Kyle Kuzma dilemma in and of itself. So I ask you guys this real quickly when it comes to Kyle Kuzma. Spencer, I'll start with you first, and that is, what is his real value out there in the NBA? And even more importantly, if he's not traded, which he assumes will happen because he took the Lakers off his Instagram this month. If it's not, if he doesn't have enough value out there to the NBA, what is his real value to the Lakers? Can he still stay a consistent part of the rotation?
Well, I think sort of compared to last year, I think his value has actually increased. I know, obviously, if you ask a Lakers fan after his playoff performance, his stock has never been lowered, right? But I think his value is probably more stable than we as fans might perceive it, because he had a good season in terms of shooting. He had his best defensive season. And he was borderline elite at rebounding at some points in the year. If you look at like offensive rebound or defensive rebound percentage, not just the total per game. So I think around the league, he should have some interest. And I think it was reported OKC and Sacramento will make an offer. So that's interesting. OKC, obviously, they're rebuilding, so maybe they could take him on as a sort of a depressed asset and build him up and trade him for even more draft picks, because that's what they do.
But they only have 50.
Right? And
no, seriously, they only have 50.
You can never have enough draft picks or shooting.
They have 25 first-round picks and 25 second-round picks coming up in the next decade.
Right. And Sacramento's had interest in him for a while. I think the Buddy Hield Kyle Kuzma swap has been rumored for a long time. So, I think he does have value in the league. But if maybe I'm wrong and he doesn't have value, I think it's important he'd still have a big role on the team, just because LA needs 6'8" forwards that can play, some level of defense and hit threes. Like if you watch the Nets and Bucks series, you'd see the importance of perimeter defense. And we have strong rim protection, I'd say, and we have strong defenders at the guard positions. But so much of our wing defense is just LeBron and AD right now. And if you take Kuzma off the roster, now you're really looking at a dearth of options.
LakerTom?
I pretty much agree with what Spencer's saying. I think what's interesting about Kuz is that I think in his contract, one of the reasons that he settled for the $13 million was, first, he got the poison pill, which prevented him from being traded in the middle of the year. And I think also he did not want to be in a situation where, regardless of how he played, because he seems to me to be committed to becoming a complete player, as opposed to being a high scorer on a losing team type of situation. And so I think that he smartly undervalued himself in the contract. He's not, I think he's worth easily $15 million on the open market. And I think that there'll be a lot of teams looking for him. He very well, as Spencer intimated, could be part of a package for Buddy Hield. And from OKC, obviously the candidate that the Lakers might be interested in would be Kemba Walker. So those are both situations that, you throw a Marc Gasol or his contract, some small filler in there, and you're able to complete those two trades. So, I think that there's 29 teams in the league who would like to have Kyle Kuzma in some form and shape. Everybody understands that he's a pretty well-rounded player, and you'll find teams that basically have need for for a backup small forward or power forward, they'll be giving themselves all of these reasons why he'll be much better when he's not playing with LeBron James and Anthony Davis. This is a kid who's averaged 20 points per game and is for over like 25 games that he started in the NBA. So he can score and he can do almost all of the things that you really need from a elite player. And his major problem, no matter how you cut it, is that the two positions he plays happen to be the positions held by LeBron James and Anthony Davis. So I think Kuz is gone for sure. The Lakers' problem is that they need a major overhaul, but all they can really afford at this point in time is an oil change. So they've got two contracts that are really tradable, both $13 million contracts, KCP and Kuzma. So now they don't have anybody else to use for filler. The only other filler they possibly have is like $2.5 million for Gasol, assuming he doesn't retire and go to play in the Spanish league. So it's going to be difficult. So what the Lakers are going to have to do is they're going to have to work out ways with Dennis Schroeder and with Montrezl Harrell, Alex Caruso and THT, that if they're not going to keep them, they better get them in a sign and trade, because they need to take advantage of that, because otherwise they've only got $26 million in movable pieces that they can assemble and trade for a good player. So they need to be able to do that. And then probably the other side of the coin, which I think is going to happen, is to get the quality of player that they need to replace people in the starting lineup who didn't pull their weight last year, and to get somebody like a Kyle Lowry or a Miles Turner or any of those people like that, or talking more about guys. I think the Lakers are going to have to accept the fact that they're going to get hard capped, and they're going to go after a free agent, because the guys that are tradable, that are on the market to be traded for, aren't really the kind of guys that are going to be the third star that the team needs. I think Kyle Lowry is going to be the first target. And if they get a chance to trade for Lowry, since he's going to be a free agent, sign and trade, they will be hard capped. And the silver lining for the organization is that they'd probably rather be hard capped than putting $100 million in additional profit sharing for the rest of the league.
Well, we'll see what happens with Kyle Kuzma, because he thinks he might be out the door. I know LakerTom and Spencer, I think, have a good idea as well, that if they're at all possible, that he will be out the door and his tenure with the Lakers may be done, but we'll wait and see. But again, it's Kyle Kuzma and Dilemma. And if you guys have any questions out there or thoughts on Kyle Kuzma and whether or not we should keep him, what's his trade value, should we get rid of him, we want to hear your thoughts at Lakerholics.com. Please be part of the conversation today at Lakerholics.com, or you can go ahead at Lakers Fast Break on Twitter, LakersFastBreak at Yahoo.com, or you do not like what LakerTom just said, at LakerTom on Twitter as well. But guys, there's still more to talk about on today's program, and that is, we talked about before on last week's show about big name targets. And I know LakerTom just mentioned it in regards to, Miles Turner, Kyle Lowry. Those are the big name targets that you're trying to go after, that a lot of other teams are trying to go after as well. But what are some of the under the radar moves, and either free agents or trades or smaller things that we can get, as far as smaller moves that we can get that may not necessarily get the headlines, but will be those key things, like, for instance, like Tom was talking about earlier with Terrence Mann and Reggie Jackson. Now, you drafted Terrence Mann, Clippers did, in the second round, and Reggie Jackson, after being let go in a move that they wanted to go ahead and cut him, so he got picked up after he was waived by the Clippers because he had a relationship there. She had a better relationship with the Lakers, but I digress. But those are smaller moves that was made. You see other moves that are made around the league where guys that are playing in Europe or guys that are coming back from the NBA, they're picked up and they give an instant boost to the team, or some players from the European League coming over, or players that are not given a chance on other NBA teams now finally getting a chance on the Lakers. Could that series happen, or could that series of events happen? We'll wait and see. But Spencer, I'm going to hit you up first. Name me some people under the radars that don't usually get talked about by Lakers fans that you think might actually work out and be a good fit for the team?
Okay, so I can name you a trio of players, and they're all from the same team. And those are Doug McDermott, Justin Holiday, and Jeremy Lamb. And so they're all from the Pacers. Indiana's in a precarious situation because they're paying a lot of money for a very mediocre team that didn't even make the postseason. So they're going to sell off rotation pieces that make a decent amount of money, but because they want to get below the luxury tax and save money on a roster that isn't doing much. So I think those three players, they're not perfect. Obviously, they're not going to solve the big needs for LA, but they bring shooting. Justin Holiday brings defense. I think Jeremy Lamb is more of a scorer than KCP is. I think those would all help LA.
I want to mention another individual from the Indiana Pacers who is going to be a free agent, and as TJ McConnell. The reason why is, he's not the greatest shooters, but provides instant defense, very much a playmaker, and the guy is one of the league leaders in steals. I mean, I've regularly seen him over the course of the past season get 5-6 steals a game, which is something that is very unique and very invaluable to a team. So I want to suggest picking him off the waiver wire as well. I want to go ahead and also mention before we hit Laker Tom, Bree Marco. Good morning, Bree. Hopefully everything is doing well with you. Hopefully you have a fantastic week. We truly appreciate you watching. But Laker Tom, want to hear your thoughts on some under-the-radar moves that the Lakers can make. I know Spencer made some good suggestions. I want to hear your thoughts on some other suggestions as well.
I would have probably put McConnell right up there at the top of my list. Great defender. Not a great three-point shooter, but a great defender. I think there are other three-point shooters out there, but they're not volume three-point shooters. Most of the volume three-point shooters have names. One of the problems that we have to face, which Spencer touched on, is if you trade Kyle Kuzma, you really have traded the only other small forward, wing that you really got. He's the one guy who can defend somebody that is too big, let's say, for KCP to defend, or any of the other guards that we have, even Matthews. Matthews does a better job against bigger people, but mostly that's just stripping the ball from them. I do like the idea of going after Terrence Mann. He's a free agent next year, and maybe he would like to just, move across the aisle or move across the locker rooms the same way as Montrezl Harrell did. It'll be interesting to see what happens with that team. You read about these comments also that Kawhi is disenchanted with the training staff of the team and so forth. And that whole business of sitting up there in the box, I don't understand it. It's either a failure of management from the people who are running him to understand how the optics of that look to the average fan, or even just to the guys on his team, I just couldn't imagine. It's sort of like Lou Williams going to the Magic,
the Gentlemen's Club.
The Gentlemen's Club. You wouldn't expect that to happen on a LeBron James team.
Yeah, I mean, Alex couldn't even go to a wedding.
Yeah, it just seems kind of funny, So I do think that there's a principle involved here, which is that one of the things that the Lakers probably learned from what they did last year when they had a championship squad and probably kept more of it together than they should have kept together. Overrated them based upon the fact that they had just won a championship, which is what you'd expect them to do. Sure could have been stupid to do it the other way around and underrate them. But at any rate, I think what they've seen from the play that they've seen from role players on other teams is that they need to get better. They need better role players. Players who are going to come through. They kept saying the shots were going to fall. Well, the shots never fell, and we were out of the playoffs. So you couldn't reach that point. So I think that you still got to focus on those three starters. Three starters you're going to put on the court with LeBron James and Anthony Davis. The rest of the players, the rest of the players from 6 on, you can get guys at minimum contract who can do those jobs.
I know. Is there any one of those minimum contracts that you're out there? I mean, you've mentioned before in the past,
well,
like
Terrence Mann, CJ McConnell. You know, I would. It just depends on how. It depends on what some of these guys who were on teams. I think Markieff Morris, I would still keep that guy on the team. You know, there's you got to look at certain things that fit the roster. But I think what I'm saying is that none of those guys who I don't consider THT to be untouchable. I don't consider Alex Caruso to be untouchable. This team needs to improve their starters, and if those guys have to go in order to do that, then in the right deal, I don't have a problem with them going. And I think the team should be aggressive in that sense, that there really are only 2 untouchables on this team, LeBron James and Anthony Davis.
Okay. I thought you were talking about the new Dodgers owners that are now Lakers. They're kind of untouchable as well. But
I don't know. Well, you think that'll is going to change Genie's attitude toward paying luxury tax?
The only thing is what do they bring to the team? And with them, they can now bring success. I mean, the Dodgers now are not the best team in the league right now. San Francisco is, but still, they're very highly rated. They're still highly up there. I mean, they've won a world championship. They've been to.
I've always been a Dodger hater. It's just a bummer for me.
Well, let me just say this: they've been to 3 World Series in a row. They have I mean, it's not an accident that they came in, that they bought it. They came in with the Magic Johnsons and came in with all that and a lot of hullabaloo, and they've done a great bidding war for. But it's not an accident that as soon as they came in, the team's fortunes rose, and they became a team that decided to go ahead and they'll spend whatever amount that they wanted to do. And that they didn't care about the hard cap or anything like that. They just went out and they got the best players they could. They made trades that worked for them. And yes, they should have gotten more than 1 world championship, but Houston cheated. But that's another story and whatnot. But yes, and Boston cheated and whatnot. Yep. So, yes. So yes, it's another story in and of itself. But again, you know, they come in with that attitude. And when you got someone that comes in with that recent pedigree, not coming in with the pedigree that they won championships 10 years ago, they won it this past year. The same time you were holding a trophy, they were holding a trophy. Yep. So that they come in with that knowledge, and they also come in with that money, because the Dodgers machine and the Dodgers channel, that's a money-making machine right there.
Well, for you. Yeah, but that money went to Philip, remember? It didn't go to Genie and the Lakers.
Yeah, I understand it, but the thing is, if Genie wants to go ahead,
needed another $1 billion, you know.
But Forbes also has listed, you know, the Dodgers and the Lakers as 2 of the most valuable teams in sports, as well over $4 billion value.
They're going to pair them together now.
Yeah, so there should be no excuses about hitting hard caps, about hitting hard taxes. Obviously, you don't want to go to the point where Golden State is, where if you get
it's ludicrous. When you want to add a $10 million player, you're going to pay him $50 million. You're going to pay $50 million a year.
You don't want it to get to that point unless you're winning championships. Unless you're winning championships, you really don't want to get
winning championships. I mean,
that's still losing.
What are you saying to the guy who's making $3 million that's on the team when you add a guy making $10 million, knowing that that's costing the club $60 million?
Yeah, it's still, you're like you're saying, it is a hard swallow. I get that, but the thing is,
there's a point where it becomes almost like a hard cap. It's effectively so horrifying to add a big.
I'm just saying that there are no more excuses. There are no more excuses on spending money when it comes to. I mean, you saw how mad I was with the PPP and the fact that they applied for a PPP loan. You remember how incensed I was in regards to that. I thought that was insulting. Very embarrassing. Yeah. And to see them now where they're at, I mean, they're not hurting for cash. They should not be hurting for cash. So I don't want to hear any excuses now. Spending money should never be the answer for the Lakers. It should never, by this point going forward, it should never be the answer. It should never be the problem for the Lakers spending money.
Well, there's a question about what you spend the money on.
Yes,
let's say that you go out there and you re-sign Dennis Schroeder for $25 million. But you re-sign Caruso for $8 million. Re-sign.
It's about getting
THT.
value.
Well, let me finish. Re-sign THT for $12 million. Okay, you've saved all of those things right there. You go out there and you're of course by now you're a taxpayer, so you're only going to have a $6 million MLE. But you go out and sign somebody for the $6 million MLE. You fill out the rest of the roster with veteran minimum payments and so forth. Your tax bill is going to be around $60 to $75 million.
You make that
means the last player you added for that $7 million MLE is going to cost you $42 million.
But the thing is value, Tom, for what you're getting, and they're making the right decisions with the money you spend. It should just not come down to the fact that.
But there's a point where if you're talking about, here's a roster A that I can build without being hard capped, giving me an opportunity to do a sign and trade for a free agent, which is going to be better than what I'm going to get from a trade, considering what assets I have to trade. Okay. Versus, here's what you get with you spend all your money on just bringing back your own players and not even really upgrading the rest of the roster.
But there's also a built-in sense of how much the Lakers get. I mean, the last 10 years where the Lakers did not have a good 10-year period, when they were down, I'd love to see the books. Show me the books on how much money they were bringing in, because based on
losing money.
sales.
I'm sure they're not losing money up until the last few years.
Even in those years of struggle, they were probably still doing well enough financially. But now that you have LeBron and AD, and you're selling all the paraphernalia with their names on it, unfortunately, you are selling a lot of Kobe jerseys still as well. You were selling even while he was still alive. You were still selling a ton there.
We got nothing to cry about financially.
Yeah, exactly. So I mean,
we're getting more than our share, even though we're having to contribute, a huge amount of taxes.
There's no excuses. I mean, when it comes to spending money, if there's a value out there, obviously what you spend it on.
But there is a diminishing return. If you can get 95% of the same lineup without wasting $75 million in luxury taxes, most GMs are going to take that 95% route, and I think that Rob Pelinka would too. And
spending wisely.
A lot of it comes down to what do they want? Do they want Kyle Lowry? Is there a Kyle Lowry deal out there?
Yeah.
If there's a Kyle Lowry deal out there, this team is going to be hard capped.
But is there anyone under the radar? I mean, you always mentioned Willie Cauley-Stein, who I think would be a great fit.
Yeah, Nerlens Noel. Make it $5 million. I'd go for him for a
Mitchell Robinson if he becomes available.
Well, no, here's the two things. Here's the thing about a center. You want to go modern, either modern defensively or modern offensively. Modern defensively means you need a guy who can go out to the 3-point line, who's not going to get played off the floor like Gobert did, is not going to get played off the floor like JaVale did and like Dwight did. He's got to be able to switch, rotate, and defend. Find a defensive center who can protect the rim and defend all three areas like that. That's Nerlens Noel. He's got that mobility and speed. Quick.
Mitchell Robinson too. Don't forget about Mitchell Robinson. He's very athletic and
but I still think that he's the guy they'll keep.
Yeah, I know
he's under contract and he's a young kid, and Nerlens 30 years old.
Yeah,
we'll never get that money back that he didn't take that contract. But Cauley-Stein's another guy who can fit into that same mold of being that modern defensive center, or you get a guy who can shoot threes. I mean, I've even thought of Kelly Olynyk. I mean, his ability to attack and shoot from distance has a value of stretching the floor. And he's not a starter, but I'd sure like if I had a third center, I'd want him to be a 3-point shooter. I mean, that's the other way that everybody's going modern. I mean, and we've obviously talked about my ideal situation of turning Ben Simmons into a small ball center. I think that's perfect because he's again that modern defensive center. He's not going to spread the floor or anything, but definitely can finish lobs and stuff like that better than our existing guys. But man, to have a center that can switch and defend all 5 positions, has that mobility, the value of that defensively, that's the player to put next to Anthony Davis. The two of them together would just put a lid on the basket.
Well, we'll see what happens. There's a lot of moves to be made by the Lakers that they need to make. So we'll see how that pans out. But guys, there's still more to talk about in today's program. In fact, Jason Kidd has agreed to terms with the Dallas Mavericks and is heading to Dallas to coach the Dallas Mavericks. And rumor has it, Spencer, that he is going to be taking some coaches along with him. And Well, what'd you say, Tom?
Trying to take.
Trying to take. Well, that usually means he's going to take at least one, or two. But we'll see what happens. Spencer, if there was any coach you would want to stay or any coach you would like to see gone, I know a lot of people say they're glad to see Jason Kidd gone because they're not sure exactly what he did for the team. But need I digress. Spencer, your thoughts on which coach you would not like to see go? For me, it's Phil Handy because I think he's been a great, just an awesome fit for the team. And obviously he was a major and integral part of the Lakers championship. And then Lionel Hollins, a defensive master, but he was also not there when the team won in the bubble. So I want to hear your thoughts on who you think that is okay to go and who you really love to stay.
Yeah, I think I agree with you. I'm pretty sure most Lakers fans unanimously would keep Phil Handy for player development. I think, he's like a player development guru around the league. Honestly, I think maybe the Lakers could use a new shooting coach based on this season.
Oh, you don't like Penberthy?
And I don't know. Maybe, so it's interesting, right? The Pelicans fired Stan Van Gundy. They're going to look for a new coaching staff. The shooting coach in New Orleans is universally renowned in the NBA for fixing people's jump shots. Like Brandon Ingram and Lonzo Ball are two great examples. They were below average shooters, and then they became, borderline elite in New Orleans. So I don't know. Maybe I'm like really out there with this, but if we could
great suggestion.
We could get I think his name's Fred Vincent from the Pelicans.
Right.
That would be perfect for LA.
I mean, because Penberthy hasn't done the greatest job in the world, and the 3-point shooting is reflective of that. So that's a great suggestion right there. Tom, again,
I think you should take Mike Penberthy with him. Jason Kidd.
Yeah,
take him
that's
there,
the case.
Then open it up because I agree with Spencer. He definitely he's the kind of shooting coach that would be perfect for us. I also think that I think we need an offensive coordinator. You need to be somebody in. I mean, crazy as it sounds, I would love to see Mike D'Antoni take over the offense. That would be an interesting situation. It's always good for controversy on the Lakers thing because I'm a big Mike D'Antoni supporter and admirer, and Gerald and most of the other Lakerholics are anti-Mike D'Antoni's.
I never said I was anti-Mike D'Antoni.
Did it? Well, I never heard you.
No, that's Jamie. Sorry. You get me confused with Jamie.
Okay, sorry, don't mean to include you in that group.
I love 7 seconds or less. I would love the Lakers to go ahead and just be a fast break.
Well, one big part of the 7 seconds or less thing is you're always going up against the 7 seconds or less defense. There's a big difference there.
You got to remember, I'm from the days when the late 80s, early 90s with Loyola Marymount, Paul Westhead. Paul Westhead to me was a truly tremendous coach. I love offense. I'm sorry. Don't ever confuse me as being a Mike D'Antoni hater because I'm not. That is up to other individuals on our staff. So I'm not one of them. Okay.
My apologies.
Okay, fair enough. It's okay. I know you get, but remember, Jamie Sweet has more hair, a lot more hair. So I'll leave it at that. But guys, there's still much more to talk about right now. And before we go ahead and head on out, I want to go ahead and talk real quick about what my appearance was recently on the Upside Swings podcast. And Stone Hansen Hansen's appeared on our show, and hopefully we can get him and the rest of the team on my show pretty soon, talk about the NBA draft. But one of the things we talked about, along with who are the Lakers going to pick, which we've talked about on this show, and who they're interested in, and who would be a good fit, and yada, 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 was the thing that they mentioned on there. And one of the topics that they mentioned was if they keep what is the worst option for the Lakers, for somebody that they would pick available in that area. And I thought about it, and I said the worst option for the team is if they keep that pick, because that means that a trade that they were looking for to either trade up, to trade down, to trade out, to get an established player, most importantly, that could help the team more this upcoming season than maybe a rookie available option, because if you see them draft a Quist Duarte or a Sharif Cooper or whoever is available in that spot, like we talked about on last week's program, to me, cannot help you in the playoffs too much. But an established player would be more trusted come playoffs. There are very few rookies that are getting playoff time this deep in the playoffs. So I ask you, Spencer, am I wrong on this? Is the worst option for the team right now actually keeping the pick at number 22?
No, I think in general you're right, just because, if we keep the pick, that means a trade didn't happen, right? I guess the counter argument would be that because of the AD trade and the Stepien rule, I think the next opportunity we have to draft is 2027 or so.
We can trade the 26th pick.
Yeah, so I guess that's the obvious counter.
Or the 27 if we wanted.
The Lakers,
but by that time, LeBron is gone.
Yeah, that's true. That's the caveat and everything. But if you're a big believer in the Lakers front office and their recent draft history, which has been pretty good, I'd say, then I guess you'd support taking the 22nd pick, because we're not going to be drafting for a while. So
again, to me, I'm hoping that they will trade for an established player, because I think that's a little bit more attractive. I know that they actually have to make the pick according to, like we said, the Ted Stepien rule, but they don't have to eventually keep the pick, because they can go ahead and trade the rights to another team along with established players and package that and see what happens there. But LakerTom, am I right? I think if you're talking about the diminishing window that we always talk about when it concerns LeBron and AD, AD's health and LeBron's age. I mean, you're not going to get much more prime LeBron and AD at this point in time. So you got to do what you can now to help the team win now. And that's great if you can get a rookie that can fill out your minutes during the regular season. That's what's been talked about. But that really doesn't help you very much in crunch time, because very few rookies, again, get to flourish at this point in the NBA season.
Yeah, I think you're generally right, Gerald. The interesting aspect about it is the team has done an excellent job drafting.
Yeah.
The scouting department has some good chops. And, 22nd is a lot closer to the lottery than 29 or 30, the way we've been drafting in previous years. So, you never know. But I think here's the thing, that any deal we make, it would almost have to say that we didn't make a trade. And I find that almost impossible to imagine, simply because, number one, there are a lot of guys. There are a lot of players available. I mean, just look at the point guards available. There's at least a half a dozen elite point guards available. Some of them by sign and trade, but they're available. Some of them, almost all of them, $30 million, but they're available. They would require a complex sign and trade thing. You get involved with base year compensation, because some of the big raises and so forth are going to mean that those are different in value and matching salaries between the two teams for the same.
But also, you got to
player.
consider the number 22 pick has a certain value itself as far as what you have to give that individual.
So, and then there's always the wild card. Maybe they spot somebody that they just love, and they want to keep them. As idiotic as it may sound in a win-now environment, with LeBron James injured 2 of the last 3 years, with LeBron James 36 years old, you're thinking about a 20 or 19-year-old kid and what he can do for your franchise when your kids are in college. Seriously. Of course, then we go back to the Boyle Kyle Lowry trade. What the hell was the thinking on that trade? That Talen Horton-Tucker was going to help LeBron win a championship? Help in the way that Terrence Mann or Cameron Payne have helped their teams win games at clutch times in the playoffs. I've been one of the first guys on his island, but not at the cost of somebody like Kyle Lowry. And so I think the Lakers recognize that mistake, and I think that not only will the draft choice be a sweetener almost a demanded sweetener in a lot of deals. But when you're talking about guys like any of those big names that we want to put together a deal for, which is possible with a double sign and trade, we'd have to, somehow those people might have to want Harrell and want Schroeder and not have the cap space to do it, and have a player that we want and so forth. And so you got to find those right situations. But I think the THT and the draft pick are both going to be traded.
I'm going to say right now that the Mo Wagner was a miss because you had Mitchell Robinson, who we just talked about. I think that other than that, the Lakers have drafted pretty good. Mo Wagner is almost out of the league. I mean, he's still hanging on. He's been waived by the Celtics, but I think he's going to be able to have at least one more chance at an NBA job before things happen. And his brother is being.
And I think that was Magic's sort of insertion into that draft process.
Yeah, well, you saw what happened there, but yeah, his brother is very highly sought of, Franz Wagner, who is depending on who you talk to, is a top 10 pick. So been very interested to see what he's going to go ahead and materialize as. But yes, I think right now the worst option is keeping the number 22 pick, because that means a lot of stuff has fallen through. A lot of proposals by the Lakers were not accepted, and that means that the Lakers again have to pick very well at that position. They can't say they won't, can't say they can't, but asking a rookie to come in and play crucial minutes at a given point in time, where you could have picked up somebody during the course of the season that might help you a little bit more during that crucial part of the NBA season, is kind of hard to ask, especially someone that's coming right out of college. Even if they are older, like Chris Duarte at 24, 25, it's still a tough ask. Your first year in the league, I want you to go ahead and play tough minutes against Chris Paul. How about doing that right now in the second round of the NBA playoffs? Just doing something like that, or it's just a hard ask. It's just a hard ask. But guys, it's been great talking to you both. But before you head on out, Spencer, please go ahead and give an update on what you're doing at Basketball-University on Medium. And then, of course, Laker Tom, he's going to tell you why you need to check out Lakerholics.com. But Spencer, medium.com/basketball-university.
Okay, so we're gonna have some roundtable predictions for the NBA Finals coming up. We've released articles on the Ben Simmons debacle, which I think everyone in the NBA is interested in. I've recently broken down why the Lakers went from the NBA Finals to first round exits, along with the Miami Heat, and I think, if you read about the Miami Heat situation, they're in a pretty similar spot where, I think it was just reported they might trade Tyler Hero in much the same way we're going to trade our first round pick and probably Talen Horton-Tucker. And yeah, we've got more original, very in-depth basketball content for the NBA playoffs and the NBA draft coming soon.
I'll tell you what, that was a good read. Anything that you're doing out there is a good read at Basketball-University. And yeah, when it comes to the Lakers and Heat, I think the quick turnaround did affect both, but it affected the Lakers more than the Heat. I think the Heat had a little bit more depth, and maybe they played a little bit over their heads in the bubble. But apparently that Pat Riley is back to work. He's wooing. Even though he's not supposed to, but he's wooing players from other teams to try and come to Miami already. He's trying to work his magic, but with Lakers, of course, it's all about getting the individuals, LeBron and AD, healthy and going from there and building a team around them that can do a little bit more this upcoming season. But Laker Tom, I know you've got Lakerholics.com, where you constantly terrorize Sean Grice and also as well Jamie Sweet. But besides terrorizing them and also cheering what our good friend L. Rob is saying out there, what you got in store for us at Lakerholics.com?
I'm working on an article right now, Gerald, talking about how the Lakers need to go big this summer. They can't settle for just, I think the analogy I used in the article was one that I said earlier, that this is a team that needs a major overhaul, not an oil change. And so they need to really be thinking big. And the only way that they're going to do that by thinking big is by embracing the sign and trades. I mean, sign and trades of your own players in order to have additional trade assets so that you can trade for more expensive players and be able to match salaries, and trading for other teams' free agents, even though that will make you hard capped, simply because there are a bunch of them out there, several of whom would be interested in coming to the Lakers and are perfect fits in our starting lineup. Guys like Kyle Lowry, so forth. So it's going to be a challenge to see what happens. I'm also in the middle of finishing it, just almost complete, with an article talking about the Lakers center situation and how they're, from day one after they traded for Anthony Davis, they've been working hard to make sure that, AD does not have to basically cater to his preference to play power forward, so he doesn't have to do the banging at center. And yet, there's a lot of questions to be asked about that decision, because it really affects the kind of roster that you put around the team, whether he plays center or not. So there's a lot of big questions there. Should he play center? How much center should he play? Should it only be in the playoffs? Should it be only in the regular season a little bit? If you look at the numbers, the stats say that the Lakers basically this year decided they weren't going to play Davis anywhere near minutes in the regular season or the playoffs that he played the first time around, even though they won a championship. They seem to have geared toward that. And the ultimate result of that focus is this ill-advised desire to bring back Andre Drummond as a starting center next year. We need two things from center. We need somebody who can stretch the floor, or somebody who can protect the rim and defend the perimeter. Those are all things that Andre Drummond doesn't do well. So the Lakers need to solve the conundrum of what is Anthony Davis's position. Magic Johnson came out the other day and said what probably a lot of us have thought at various times during the last 2 years. Anthony Davis should play center, period. There's something to be said for that position. There's something to be said about Anthony coming out and saying, enough with this stuff. Put me at center. If that's what we need to do to win, do it. And I think that's what he said last year during the playoffs. And it worked. So I don't understand this desire to somehow, get the wrong kind of center to complement Anthony Davis. I'm not even so sure that.
Put some more skill around him.
Yeah, I think put some skill shooting and put somebody who can't be played off the floor. I mean, if even if you put a guy like Nerlens Noel next to him, Noel can bang with any of those big guys. He's athletic enough so that he can defend on the perimeter. He can track a guard all the way to the layup and block the shot the same way as AD can. Or get somebody like Porzingis who can really stretch the floor and shoot 8 or 9 threes a game and be a force that way. You got to decide what you want. You don't want to have a low-post traditional center who can't stretch the floor, can't protect the rim, can't play on the defense on the perimeter and switch, and frankly, is not a great lob catcher. I mean, one of the things that really impressed me about Ayton is he catches that ball and he moves the ball around in his hand, before he dunks it, getting the right angle and so forth. We're lucky if Andre just catches the ball, much less being able to control the ball and direct it around somebody's arm in order to dunk it. So those are the two subjects that I think are big subjects that are going to decide what kind of team we're going to have going forward.
Well, you can check out more of the articles again for Spencer at medium.com/basketball-university. And also as well, Laker Tom, you can go ahead and check out his work at Lakerholics.com. Be part of the conversation today at Lakerholics.com. For us, check us out and all the other great shows at NBA's greatest place to go for podcasts and basketball, learning, listening, anything relating to the NBA at hoopheadspod.com for the Hoopheads Podcast Network. We've still got the deal going on. I know that chuckles Laker Tom every time, but go ahead and type in the word Fast Break, all one word, at manscaped.com to get 20% off plus free shipping. It's a great place to go for men's grooming. And, of course, support everything that we do right here at the Lakers Fast Break. But, guys, we will see you for Friday's show, which we'll tape on Thursday night or Thursday afternoon. We haven't decided yet, but there's going to be more great Laker topics to come. NBA playoff update. Will the finals be set by that time? We'll wait and see. But, guys, it's been great talking to you both. Laker Tom, Spencer, please go ahead and check your bank accounts. We'll see if we can make a additional proposal to see if we can get it. Now, maybe if Mark Walter and Todd Bowley, maybe they're short of cash because they bought a percentage of the Lakers and they also have the Dodgers. Maybe we can actually entice them by going ahead and maybe spending a little bit more than the $1.35 billion they just spent on the Lakers shares. So we'll see what happens there. We'll see if we can get our money together, and who knows, maybe I'll hit a jackpot here in Las Vegas that will help the cause. But guys, it's been great talking to you. I'm wishing you a great week, and everyone out there listening and watching, thank you so much for doing so. Please support us. Go ahead and follow us, like us, do whatever you can, subscribe to our shows. But again, support us. Go ahead, and we will see you later this week with shows coming up, hopefully on Wednesday, but I know certainly on Friday, right here at the Lakers Fast Break Podcast.